stop. Take a breath. If you feel like the harder you work toward your goals, the further away they move, you are caught in the 2026 quantum knot. Most people think the universe is testing their persistence, their grit, their determination. It's not. In the 2026 frequency, effort is actually a form of resistance. Let that sink in. The more you try, the more you signal to the quantum field that you don't already have what you want. You are literally pushing your manifestation away with the energy of your own struggle. Now I know what you're thinking, but I've been taught my whole life that hard work is the only way. That hustle culture is the path. That grinding is how you get there. And that's exactly the problem. That's the knot. You've been operating in a three-dimensional paradigm that was designed for a world that no longer exists. The 2026 timeline operates on completely different quantum mechanics, and if you're still using 2024 or 2025 strategies, you're trying to unlock a digital door with a physical key. It doesn't matter how hard you turn it, it will never open. I've watched thousands of people struggle with this exact pattern. They're doing all the right things on paper: vision boards, affirmations, action steps, networking, posting, creating. And yet their AVD, their actual vibrational direction, the real momentum of their life, is completely flatlining. Here's what's actually happening, and this is where it gets fascinating. Every time you try hard, every time you force, every time you push with effort, energy, you are confirming to your subconscious mind and to the quantum field itself that the thing you want is separate from you, that it's out there instead of in here, that it requires struggle to obtain instead of simple alignment to receive. You are energetically broadcasting, "I don't have this yet. I need to work for it. It's difficult, it requires sacrifice." And the universe, which is nothing more than a mirror of your dominant frequency, reflects that exact reality back to you. More difficulty, more sacrifice, more separation from what you desire. In the next minutes, I am going to show you how to untie this knot. I'm going to reveal the 5 specific ways that hard work has become a three-dimensional trap that keeps you locked in the old timeline. And I'll give you the quantum de-threading technique, a specific process to collapse your desired reality in half the time with zero effort. Not less effort. Zero effort. Because effort itself is the problem. If your momentum is flatlining, if you feel like you're running in place, if you're exhausted from doing all the right things and getting nowhere, this is the reason why. And by the end of this transmission, you'll see the invisible threads that have been holding you back. And more importantly, you'll know exactly how to cut them. Let's unlock the field. The first knot, and this is the one that catches almost everyone, is what I call the how trap. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The word how is the fastest way to kill a miracle. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you ask, how will this happen? How will I get the money? How will I meet the right person? How will my business grow? You are doing something that seems logical but is actually energetically catastrophic. You are limiting the infinite intelligence of the quantum field to your own small human three-dimensional logic. Think about that for a second. The universe has billions of pathways, synchronicities, opportunities, and coincidences at its disposal. It can orchestrate events you couldn't possibly imagine. It can connect dots you don't even know exist. But the moment you fixate on how, you're essentially telling the universe, no, I only want it to happen this way. The way I can currently see, the way that makes sense to my limited perspective. Here's a real example. I worked with a woman last year who desperately wanted to leave her corporate job and start a creative business. She had the vision. She had the passion. But she was completely stuck in the how trap. She kept asking, how will I replace my income? How will I find clients? How will I build a website? How will I compete with people who've been doing this for years? Every single one of those questions was a knot tightening around her manifestation. Because here's what she couldn't see. She was only looking at the obvious pathways. Apply to freelance sites, network on LinkedIn, cold email potential clients, all the three-dimensional effort-based strategies. But the universe had a completely different path waiting for her. 2 months after she stopped asking how and started operating in what I'll teach you in Not 5, the release frequency, a random Instagram comment led to a DM conversation, which led to a coffee meeting, which led to her discovering that someone she went to high school with had just launched a company in her exact niche and desperately needed someone with her specific skills. She landed a contract worth more than her annual corporate salary within 3 weeks. And it came through a channel she never would have strategized for. She wasn't even trying to network. She was just commenting authentically on a post about pottery. That's the quantum field. That's what happens when you stop strangling your manifestation with how. Now, your logical mind is probably screaming right now, but I can't just sit around doing nothing. I have to have a plan. I have to know the steps, and that's the paradox of the 2026 timeline. You don't do nothing, but you stop doing from effort energy and start doing from inspiration energy. There's a massive difference. Effort energy says, I must do this because otherwise it won't happen. Inspiration energy says, I feel pulled to do this because it feels alive and exciting. One ties the knot tighter. One unravels it completely. Here's how the how trap actually works on a quantum level. And this is where it gets really interesting. When you focus intensely on the mechanism, the how, you collapse the wave function of infinite possibility into a single narrow probability. You're literally using the power of your observation and attention to limit reality. In quantum physics, we know that observation affects outcome. The famous double-slit experiment proved that particles behave differently when they're being watched versus when they're not. Your consciousness literally shapes physical reality. So when you obsessively observe and analyze the how, you're forcing the quantum field to match your limited expectations. You're rejecting miracles before they even have a chance to form because they don't fit your pre-approved plan. Look at the screen right now. Stop planning. I want you to really feel the resistance that just came up when you read those words. Stop planning, but that's irresponsible, that's naive, that's how people fail. That resistance you just felt? That's the knot. That's the conditioning. That's every authority figure, every self-help guru, every success story you've been fed that told you the path to achievement is meticulous planning and strategic execution. And in the old timeline, that was true. In the third-dimensional frequency of separation in linear time, planning was necessary because you truly were separate from your desires and had to build a bridge to get there. But we're not in that frequency anymore. The 2026 timeline operates on simultaneity, on entanglement, on the principle that everything you desire already exists in the quantum field as a potential reality. And your only job is to match the frequency of that reality so it can collapse into your physical experience. You don't build a bridge to it. You become vibrationally identical to it and it materializes around you. So here's the pattern interrupt for Not 1. Every time you catch yourself asking how, I want you to replace it with this question instead. What would it feel like if this had already happened? Not how will it happen, but how does it feel now that it's done? That's the question that unties the first knot. And here's why this works. Feeling is the language of the quantum field. Not thoughts, not plans, not strategies. Feeling. When you generate the feeling of your desire being already fulfilled, you are broadcasting that frequency into the field. And the field, which operates on resonance and magnetism, begins to reorganize physical reality to match that frequency. It pulls people, circumstances, opportunities, and coincidences toward you that are aligned with that feeling state. You don't have to know how. You don't have to figure out the mechanism. You just have to hold the frequency, and the universe handles the logistics. I know that sounds too simple. I know it sounds like spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. But I've watched it work thousands of times in my own life and in the lives of people I've coached. The ones who release the how are the ones who experience quantum leaps. The ones who cling to it stay stuck in incremental progress. So if you're ready to untie the first knot, you know what to do. Stop asking how, start feeling done, and stay with me because the second knot is even more insidious. And it's happening in your body right now whether you realize it or not. Knot number 2 is what I call the safety paradox. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Because I need you to hear something that your conscious mind isn't going to want to accept. Your nervous system is lying to you. You think you want wealth, you think you want success, you think you want the relationship, the body, the freedom, the abundance. But here's the truth. Your nervous system feels safer in poverty. It feels safer in struggle. It feels safer in lack. Not because you're broken, not because you're self-sabotaging, but because familiarity is survival to the nervous system, and safety is more important than happiness. Let me say that again. To your autonomic nervous system, safety is more important than happiness. Your nervous system is an ancient biological mechanism that was designed to keep you alive in a dangerous world. Its primary function is threat detection and survival optimization. And here's how it calculates safety. Have I survived this before? Yes, then this is safe. I don't know if I'll survive that new thing over there, so that's dangerous. It doesn't matter if this is poverty, loneliness, or struggle. If you've survived it up until now, your nervous system has categorized it as safe. It's familiar. It's known. You've proven you can handle it. But that new level you say you want, that's unknown territory. Your nervous system has no data on whether you'll survive in that reality, so it perceives it as threat. And here's where the quantum knot gets tied. Every time you start moving toward your desire, your nervous system activates a stress response to pull you back to the familiar. It creates anxiety, procrastination, self-doubt, sudden emergencies that require your attention, or mysterious illnesses that conveniently appear right when you're about to level up. This isn't your fault. This isn't a character flaw. This is biology. But it's also the second knot that's keeping you trapped in the old timeline. And if you don't learn to recognize it and work with it, you'll keep looping in the same patterns no matter how much mindset work you do. I'll give you a personal example. When I first started making significant money in my business, more than I'd ever made in my life, I noticed a pattern. Every time I'd have a big launch or a high-income month, I would immediately get sick. Like clockwork. A cold, a flu, a mysterious fatigue that would knock me out for a week. For a long time, I thought it was just coincidence, or stress, or burnout from working too hard. But then I learned about the safety paradox and I realized what was actually happening. My nervous system was panicking. It was saying, "We've never had this much money before. We don't have data on this reality. This might be dangerous. Let's create a crisis to get back to homeostasis." And getting sick was the perfect crisis. It forced me to stop working, stop growing, stop expanding. It pulled me back to the familiar state of limitation. Once I understood this, I could start working with my nervous system instead of against it. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now. But before I give you the technique, I need you to understand something crucial. You cannot think your way out of nervous system dysregulation. You cannot affirmation your way out of it. You cannot visualize your way out of it. Because the nervous system doesn't speak the language of thoughts. It speaks the language of sensation, of felt safety, of somatic experience. So if you're trying to manifest from your head while your body is screaming danger, you're going to stay stuck in the knot. Your body will win every time. It has to. Survival trumps success in the biological hierarchy. The good news is, There's a simple way to communicate safety to your nervous system so it stops sabotaging your expansion. I call this the quantum safety signal, and it's based on polyvagal theory and somatic experiencing. Here's how it works. Your vagus nerve is the primary communication highway between your brain and your body. When your vagus nerve is in a ventral vagal state, the state of safety and social connection, your nervous system is relaxed and open to expansion. But when it's in a dorsal vagal or sympathetic state, the states of shutdown or fight or flight, your nervous system is in protection mode and will resist any change. So the key to untying the safety paradox is to actively signal safety to your vagus nerve multiple times throughout the day, especially before you do anything related to your manifestation. And stay with me for the next moments, because I'm going to show you a 30-second breathing trick that literally unkinks this energetic hose and allows abundance to flow through without triggering your survival response. It's called the physiological sigh, and it was developed by neuroscientists at Stanford. Here's how you do it. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Then at the top of that breath, take a second, shorter inhale. So you're basically doing a double inhale. Then, let all of that air out slowly through your mouth in a long, extended exhale. That's it. 2 inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth. Why does this work? Because that pattern specifically activates the ventral vagal system and signals to your nervous system that you are safe. The double inhale reinflates the alveoli in your lungs that collapse naturally during breathing, which increases oxygen and sends a safety signal to your brain. The long exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system and down-regulates the stress response. You're literally hacking your biology to feel safe enough to expand. I want you to do this before you check your bank account, before you work on your business, before you do anything that relates to your big goals. Do 3 rounds of the physiological sigh and you'll notice an immediate shift in your nervous system state. But here's the deeper work. You also need to start building evidence for your nervous system that the new level is safe. How do you do that? By taking small, more manageable actions that stretch you slightly beyond your comfort zone without triggering a full stress response. If you want to make $10,000 a month but you've never made more than $3,000, your nervous system will freak out if you try to quantum leap directly there. But if you aim for $3,500 first, prove to yourself that you can survive at that level, then move to $4,000, your nervous system gets to build a library of evidence that says, oh, we can handle more, this is safe. You're training your nervous system the way you'd train a scared animal, with patience, consistency, and gradual exposure. That's how you untie the safety paradox, and once you do, you'll be amazed at how much faster your manifestations arrive when your body isn't actively fighting against them. Now, so let's move to the third knot, because this one is about identity. And it's the reason most people never actually step into the timeline they say they want. Knot number 3 is called identity drag. And this is the one that's probably blocking you more than you realize. Here's the core issue. You are trying to manifest a 2026 reality with a 2025 version of yourself. And that doesn't work. Because manifestation isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming the person who already has it. Not metaphorically, literally. You cannot drag your old identity into your new reality. The frequency doesn't match. It's like trying to play a Blu-ray disc in a VHS player. The technology is incompatible. Here's what identity drag looks like in real life. You say you want to be a successful entrepreneur, but you still operate with employee consciousness. You want the freedom schedule, but you still need external validation and approval for every decision. You want the 7-figure business, but you still have the money stories and spending habits of someone living paycheck to paycheck. You're essentially trying to hold 2 different identities at the same time. And that internal conflict creates drag. It slows everything down. It makes manifestation feel like pulling a truck through mud. And here's the part that nobody wants to hear. The universe will never give you what you want until you become the version of yourself who already has it. Not because the universe is withholding or testing you, but because vibrational law doesn't work any other way. Let me explain this through quantum physics. In the quantum field, all possible versions of you already exist. There's a version of you who's wealthy, a version who's in an incredible relationship, a version who's healthy and vibrant. These aren't fantasies. They're actual potential realities existing in superposition. The question is, which version are you collapsing into your experience through your observation and identification? Every moment you're choosing which timeline to occupy based on who you're being, not who you're trying to be. Who you're actually being right now in the mundane moments when nobody's watching. Are you being the person who has 100,000 in the bank? Or are you being the person who's anxious about money? Because those are two completely different identities and they occupy two completely different timelines. The wealthy version of you doesn't check their bank account obsessively. They don't panic when unexpected expenses arise. They don't feel guilty about investing in themselves or their business. They operate from abundance because abundance is their baseline reality. But if you're still operating from scarcity consciousness, checking prices, justifying purchases, feeling guilty about spending, constantly worrying about money, you're identifying with the version of you who doesn't have wealth. And the quantum field will continue to reflect that identity back to you. This is what I mean by identity drag. You're trying to pull your old self into a new reality, and it creates this unbearable tension. Part of you is reaching for the new timeline, but part of you is clinging to the familiar identity because it feels safe. And as long as that internal tug of war continues, you'll stay stuck in the gap between who you've been and who you want to become. So how do you drop the identity drag? How do you actually become the new version instead of just performing as them? First, you have to get radically honest about who you're currently being. Not who you present on social media, not who you aspire to be. Who you actually are in your private moments. Do you talk to yourself with kindness or criticism? Do you honor your commitments to yourself, or do you constantly break them? Do you invest in your growth, or do you hoard resources out of fear? Do you take aligned action, or do you wait for permission? These behaviors reveal your true identity. And if there's a mismatch between the identity you claim and the identity you're actually embodying, that's your drag. Second, you have to be willing to kill the old version. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean you have to grieve them. You have to let them die, because here's what nobody tells you about transformation. You can't become the new you without letting the old you go. And that means releasing the stories, the patterns, the relationships, the habits, and the comfort zones that defined who you used to be. The version of you who struggled, who played small, who needed external validation, who operated from fear. That version has to die for the new version to be born, and that's terrifying. Because even if that old version was limiting, it was familiar. It was yours. Letting it go feels like a death because it is a death. But here's the beautiful part. Once you're willing to release the old identity, the new one doesn't have to be forced. It emerges naturally, because it's already there, waiting in the quantum field. You don't have to become it, you have to remember that you already are it. Every moment you choose thoughts, actions, and behaviors aligned with the new identity, you're collapsing that timeline into your physical reality. It's not about faking it till you make it. It's about genuinely stepping into the frequency of the person you're becoming and living from that place consistently. Here's a practice that accelerates this process. I call it identity anchoring. Every morning before you do anything else, I want you to ask yourself, who am I today? Not who were you yesterday, who are you today? And then I want you to answer that question from the future version of yourself. I am someone who creates value effortlessly. I am someone who is deeply loved. I am someone who trusts the universe completely. Speak it out loud. Feel it in your body. Anchor it into your nervous system. Then throughout the day, before you make any decision, what to eat, what to wear, how to respond to an email, whether to take a risk, ask yourself, what would the future version of me choose here? And then choose that. Every single time you choose as the future you instead of the current you, you're dropping the identity drag, you're collapsing the timeline, you're accelerating the manifestation. And that brings us to the fourth knot, which is probably the sneakiest one of all. Because this one convinces you that you're being logical when you're actually sabotaging yourself. Knot number 4 is the observation loop. And this one is absolutely critical to understand if you want to manifest quickly in the 2026 timeline. Here's the hook. Stop looking at your bank account to see if it worked. I know that sounds ridiculous. You're probably thinking, how am I supposed to manage my money if I don't look at my bank account? But hear me out, because what I'm about to explain will completely change the way you interact with your manifestations. Every time you check for results, you are observing from lack. And in quantum mechanics, observation collapses the wave function, meaning what you observe becomes your reality. Let me break this down. When you check your bank account to see if the money showed up yet, what you're actually doing energetically is broadcasting the frequency of "it's not here yet." You're observing the absence instead of the presence. And because the quantum field is a mirror, it reflects that observation back to you. More absence, more delay, more waiting. You're literally retying the knot every single time you check. The same thing happens when you obsessively check your phone to see if they texted you back, or when you constantly monitor your website analytics to see if you got more clients, or when you weigh yourself every day to see if you lost weight yet. Each observation from lack strengthens the reality of lack. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore your bank account or be irresponsible with your finances. What I'm saying is be intentional about when and how you observe your reality and what frequency you're in when you do it. If you're going to check your bank account, do it from the energy of curiosity and appreciation, not from the energy of fear and monitoring. I wonder how the universe is rearranging itself on my behalf today versus, please let there be money in there. Do you feel the difference in those two frequencies? One is open and expectant, the other is contracted and doubtful. The quantum field responds to the frequency, not the words. Here's what the observation loop actually is. It's a pattern where you put energy into a manifestation, then immediately start checking to see if it's working. And when you don't see instant results, you conclude it's not working, which creates doubt, which lowers your frequency, which pushes the manifestation further away, which makes you check more desperately, which creates more lack, and the loop continues. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of delay, and the worst part is this loop feels productive. It feels like you're staying on top of things or being realistic or taking action, but energetically you're sabotaging yourself. The 2026 timeline requires a completely different approach. It requires what I call quantum faith, the ability to plant a seed in the field and then walk away with absolute knowing that it's growing, without needing to dig it up every day to check. Think about how a farmer works. They plant seeds, water them, and then they go about their life. They don't stand over the soil every hour saying, "Is it growing yet? I don't see anything. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I should plant different seeds." They trust the process. They trust the timing. They trust the intelligence of nature. And that's exactly what you need to do with your manifestations. But here's the tricky part. Our culture has conditioned us to be obsessive monitors. We're taught to track everything, measure everything, analyze everything. Data-driven decision-making, KPIs, metrics, analytics. And in the old three-dimensional paradigm, that made sense. Because in linear time and space, you have to actively manage outcomes through effort and oversight. But in the quantum field, over-observation actually interferes with the manifestation process. It's like the double-slit experiment I mentioned earlier. Your observation affects the outcome. When you're constantly observing your lack, you're collapsing the infinite possibilities into the one reality you don't want: continued lack. So here's how to break the observation loop. First, set intentional check-in points instead of compulsive monitoring. Maybe you look at your bank account once a week on Sundays. Maybe you check your business metrics once a month. Whatever feels aligned for you, but make it intentional and scheduled instead of anxious and reactive. Second, when you do observe your reality, do it from a frequency of appreciation for what is, not anxiety about what isn't. Find something to be grateful for in whatever you see. That shifts you from lack consciousness to abundance consciousness immediately. Third, and this is the most important one, cultivate present moment awareness instead of future-focused desperation. The observation loop is fueled by the belief that your happiness, safety, or worthiness is in the future, contingent on the manifestation arriving. So you keep checking to see if the future is here yet, which keeps you out of the present, which is the only place where manifestation actually happens. The present moment is the quantum field. The now is where all possibilities exist in superposition. When you're constantly projecting into the future or reviewing the past, you're not in the field. You're in your mind, which is the realm of separation and limitation. So the practice is this: every time you catch yourself about to check for results, pause. Take 3 deep breaths. Come fully into your body, into this moment. And ask yourself, am I already whole and complete right now, regardless of whether this manifestation has arrived? If the answer is yes, you've broken the observation loop. If the answer is no, you're still stuck in it. And that brings us to the 5th and final knot, which is the one that sounds like giving up, but is actually the secret to winning. We've arrived at the 5th and final knot, and this is the one that most people never master because it contradicts everything we've been taught about achievement, success, and getting what we want. It's called the release frequency. And here's the core principle. When you don't need it to happen, it must happen. Read that again. When you don't need it to happen, it must happen. This is the frequency of indifference, not apathy, indifference. There's a huge difference. Apathy is, I don't care because I've given up. Indifference is, I'm so secure in who I am and what I'm creating that I'm not attached to when or how it shows up. Indifference is the highest manifestation frequency because it's the frequency of already having. When you already have something, you're not desperate for it. You're not checking for it. You're not worried about it. You're not trying to force it or control it. You're just being, and it exists in your reality because of course it does. Think about something you already have in your life that you don't think twice about. Maybe it's a roof over your head. Maybe it's clean water. Maybe it's the ability to read and write. Whatever it is, notice how you feel about it. Neutral, secure. It's just there. That's the release frequency. And when you can cultivate that same neutral security about the things you're currently manifesting, they collapse into your reality almost immediately. But here's the paradox. You can't fake indifference. You can't pretend not to care as a manipulation tactic to get what you want. Because that's not true indifference, that's spiritual bypassing. And the quantum field sees right through it. True indifference comes from a deep, embodied knowing that you are already complete, that your worthiness isn't conditional on external circumstances, that whether you get the thing or not, you're still whole. And that kind of knowing doesn't come from affirmations or visualizations. It comes from genuine internal work, from healing the wounds that created the neediness in the first place. Most people are trying to manifest from a wound. They want money because they feel unsafe without it. They want a relationship because they feel incomplete alone. They want success because they feel inadequate as they are. And that wounded energy, that neediness, that grasping, that desperation is the tightest knot of all. Because neediness repels. Energetically, it pushes away the very thing you're trying to attract. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop caring about whether someone texts you back, they text you back? Or the moment you genuinely accept that you might be single forever and you're okay with it, suddenly someone amazing appears. That's not coincidence. That's the release frequency in action. The universe doesn't respond to your words or your wants. It responds to your frequency. And the frequency of need is the frequency of lack. It's broadcasting, I don't have this, I'm incomplete without this, I'm desperate for this. The frequency of release is the frequency of wholeness. It's broadcasting, I'm already complete. This would be wonderful, but I'm not dependent on it for my happiness or worthiness. And here's the quantum magic. The moment you stop needing it, the universe stops withholding it. Because you're no longer in a vibrational pattern of lack, so there's nothing to reflect back to you except abundance. So how do you actually achieve the release frequency? How do you get to a place of genuine indifference without giving up on your desires? First, you have to do the internal work to heal the wound that's creating the neediness. If you're desperate for money, there's a core belief about safety that needs to be addressed. If you're desperate for love, there's a core belief about worthiness that needs to be healed. You can't bypass this step. You can't manifestation hack your way around it. Second, you have to practice detachment as a daily spiritual discipline. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring deeply about the vision while releasing control over the timeline and the mechanism. Here's a practice I use. Every night before bed, I speak my desires out loud to the universe. I state them clearly, I feel them fully. And then I end with this phrase, this or something better in perfect timing for the highest good of all. That phrase is the release frequency. It's saying, I know what I want, I'm clear about it, and I'm releasing it to the intelligence of the universe to deliver it in the way and timing that serves my highest evolution. It's the ultimate surrender, and surrender is not weakness. Surrender is the most powerful thing you can do because it's the moment you stop fighting the river and start flowing with it. That's how you untie the fifth knot. That's how you step into the 2026 timeline where effort is replaced by flow and struggle is replaced by synchronicity. Now let's bring this all together and give you a clear path forward. We've covered a lot in the last minutes. We've exposed the 5 quantum knots that have been keeping you stuck in the old timeline, trapped in effort, blocked from your manifestations. The how trap, where your need to know the mechanism limits infinite possibility to human logic. The safety paradox, where your nervous system keeps you stuck in familiar struggle because it feels safer than unknown success. Identity drag, where you're trying to pull your old self into a new reality and the mismatch creates unbearable resistance. The observation loop, where constantly checking for results actually creates more delay by collapsing the wave function into lack. And the release frequency, where needing it to happen prevents it from happening. And only indifference allows it to materialize. The quantum knot is now visible to you, and once you see it, it can no longer control you. You are no longer operating unconsciously. You're no longer accidentally sabotaging yourself with effort energy, with anxious monitoring, with desperate neediness. You can see the invisible threads now. You know where they're tied. You know how they're choking your manifestations, and most importantly, you know exactly how to untie them. You are moving from the hustle timeline to the flow timeline, from 3-dimensional grind to quantum alignment, from separation consciousness to field consciousness. But here is where the retrieval of your power really happens, and I need you to hear this clearly. Most people will watch this, nod their heads in agreement, maybe even feel a little inspired, and then tomorrow morning they'll go right back to trying, right back to forcing, right back to checking their bank account with fear and monitoring their manifestations with desperation. They'll retie the knot without even realizing it, Don't be most people. You didn't find this transmission by accident. You're here because your soul is ready for a different way. Because some part of you already knows that the old paradigm of hustle and grind and prove your worth is over. The 2026 frequency doesn't reward effort, it rewards resonance. So here's what I want you to do right now, in this moment, while the frequency of this transmission is still active in your field. I want you to perform a physical act of release, not just intellectually understand it, not just agree with it, actually do it. Here's the declaration. Identify the one thing you've been trying too hard to control. The thing you've been white-knuckling. The thing you check on obsessively. The thing that's been feeling like a struggle. Is it a relationship? Is it a business goal? Is it your health? Is it a financial target? Is it a creative project? Whatever it is, I want you to type it in the comments right now. But here's the important part. Don't just type the thing. Type the thing and then follow it with these 3 exact words. I untie the knot. For example, my financial growth, I untie the knot. Or my relationship with my body, I untie the knot. Or finding my life partner, I untie the knot. By typing this in the comments, you are doing something profound on a quantum level. You are making a public declaration to the field that the struggle phase is over. You are telling your subconscious mind, your nervous system, and the universe itself that you are releasing the grip of effort and stepping into the flow of allowing. And here's why this matters. Manifestation accelerates with witnesses. When you declare something publicly, you activate a principle called social accountability and quantum entanglement. Other consciousnesses observing your declaration actually strengthen the energetic signal. I am going to go through every single comment on this video. When I heart your comment, when I acknowledge your declaration, consider it a second observer witnessing your release, making it a quantum fact in the field. You're not just typing words. You're collapsing a timeline, you're choosing a new reality, you're untying the knot that's been choking your manifestation. So do it now. Type it in the comments. Make it real. And if this frequency feels like home to you, if this resonates at a level deeper than intellectual understanding, make sure you check out the pinned comment at the top of this video. We have a timeline calibration happening that goes even deeper into the mechanics of the 2026 frequency, and it will show you exactly how to maintain this release state as a permanent operating system instead of a temporary inspiration. We are done with effort. We are done with struggle. We are done with proving and hustling and grinding ourselves into exhaustion. We are moving into resonance, into alignment, into quantum flow. I'll see you in the comments. I'll be watching for your declarations. I'll be witnessing your release. Stay in the flow. The quantum knot has been revealed. The choice is yours, effort or flow. Drop your declaration below.